At the pinnacle of his power, a man risks losing control. The world is not kind, so its kings become cruel. Murder is never mercy, it's never noble, and it's never redeemable. To the maniac, murder is an art form.
What is happening? For God's sake, answer.
Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live. I am joined today by Alex DiVincenzo. Did I butcher that?
You're closer than most. DiVincenzo.
Yeah, well, I should be doing better. I do live in Jersey. I mean, I should have a shortcut here, but I just don't. So, Alex, you are a webmaster with a website that is, I consider it to be a daily visit for anyone that's actually interested in what's going on in the horror genre. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But you've also done other things. You've acted as in a number of different roles in the filmmaking world for short films and smaller productions. But some of those small productions have a pretty wide reach, and I want to get into that with you. You've also definitely become a Twitter presence in the community that's both vital and reaches a lot of eyes as well. So you definitely have a voice that has become more and more vital to the community.
Well, thank you. That's an awesome introduction.
Well, I don't write introductions. I just write notes and I kind of just put it together when I get here. But I first came into contact with you just through a Google search. I don't remember what I was looking for, but it was,
that was going to be my first question.
Some kind of merch. I don't remember what. I don't buy a lot of molded plastic, so it probably wasn't an action figure. I say that, though, a couple weeks ago, I did find a Mothman.
Oh, nice.
I think is very cool. But that's the kind of stuff that I find that intrigues me more than like another Jason Voorhees action figure. But I don't remember what I was looking for, but this website came up called Broke Horror Fan. And the name was pretty, it had a sense of humor about it, but it was also really relatable. So it was an easy click, and that might sound stupid. I don't click on every link I come across, but the site was exactly what I'd actually been always looking for, which is a one-stop repository of everything going on in the genre from the point of view of things being released. And I love the fact that there was so little editorializing going on there. You kind of just said, hey, this is the cool stuff coming out. It was updated daily. And it really did provide a real good glimpse of what was going on in the genre. So how did you come up with the idea for the website? And what was that process like?
Well, thank you for saying all that, first and foremost. You kind of hit the nail on the head with what my goal for the site is and has been. So it's awesome to hear that it's successful in that. Basically, I came up, writing through horror websites as like a teenager. We started on like message boards, then, had like my own little blogs and stuff like that. Contributed to some of the bigger sites over the years. But it eventually came to a point where it was like, I'm doing all this work for little to no pay. I'd rather do it on my own terms and just kind of at my own leisure. But I didn't want to be just another person, following the news cycle, reporting the stuff that's on every other horror website, because there are other sites that are way better than that. And I also, I enjoy the long form editorial writing, but first and foremost, I don't think I'm quite as good as a lot of writers who do it full-time professionally. But it's also very time consuming, and Broke Horror Fan started and remains a hobby more than a full-time job. So I wanted something I could do in my spare time and something that was unique and kind of filled a niche that wasn't being met. And as a collector of a bunch of horror things, I mean, everything, t-shirts, action figures, posters, records, DVDs, Blu-rays, whatever it is. I love it all, and I know so many people do, but that's a little stuff that kind of goes under the radar on all those other horror sites. They post about, all the posters, the trailers, the clips, the release dates, but not so much the merchandising. So I figured this is like perfect. It's something I would want to read and wanted to be more on top of. So I started Broke Horror Fan, came up with a name which was almost, I mean, again, hit the nail on the head. Like I kind of wanted it to be tongue in cheek, but also, kind of does what it says. So I am a Broke Horror Fan. I'll make you a Broke Horror Fan if you buy the stuff on the site. I should have checked before I read this. Is embarrassing. I think I started the site in like 2014, maybe. I don't know. There's an about page on the site with like 2 paragraphs of text, but I want to say 2014, and it kind of went from there. I did do a little bit of news for the first couple of years of the site, basically just posting like the big trailers that would drop because they did bring in traffic from Twitter and stuff like that. But ultimately, again, I mean, I'm not like bringing in a ton of ad revenue or something. So like, I don't care about hits. It's just like, I want to post what I enjoy. And it's exhausting trying to stay up with the news cycle because again, I'm never going to compete with the big guys. So I've just settled into strictly merchandise. Again, you can kind of look by category and get, any of those things that I mentioned before, from posters to action figures, mostly officially licensed, like studio sanctioned stuff, but I do get some, gray area where it's like, Etsy shops or artists who are doing maybe not officially licensed, but really cool artwork.
So one thing I have to say, though, I think you might be cutting yourself a little bit short because when I read the big websites, I come across, I definitely get informed about what's coming up, perhaps, but I don't get a real sense of the breadth of the genre. I kind of get whatever that editorialized article means to, explain to me. Your site, because it's such a mosaic of articles from around the genre, really gives a full-throated like dissertation of what's going on without being long form.
Well, thank you. I've never thought of it that way, but that's I like that a lot, actually.
I think it's a very successful and I don't think it was contrived. That's the other thing. If someone set out to create a website that would, in the end, this is going to be informative, but we're going to do it through showing off merch, it wouldn't work. I think much like a great punk rock song, you got to just want to go out there and do it. And then if it ends up having a lot deeper meaning, well, it's because it came from an honest place. But I also, this is going to be somewhat personal on my part, but thank you for not ignoring older horror. I can't tell you, and there's a number of people in our chat right now, the names I recognize, who will back me up on this. There seems to be this impression, especially among the big websites, that we only care about things created from 1980 onward. And I can tell you that is absolutely not true. For myself, I still have, this. If there's one nonfiction book that got me into the horror genre, it's this book.
Oh, I have not read that one.
Came out in 1972. This is the same copy I had from, 76 or so. And it's very bare bones. But this came out at a time when there wasn't really information easily accessible about films. You went to the library, maybe you found it, but you certainly didn't find a book about horror movies. It was a rare breed. Today we have the opposite situation where we have all this information, so much that you may never find any real information in the noise. So again, I think that's what your website does. And I think that's amazing. So how did you discover the horror genre as a younger person?
I actually, I always wish I had like a really cool story. Like I had some cool, like older brother, friend, cousin, neighbor, whatever. Somebody who like gave me like, hey, here, you shouldn't be watching this, but here it is. Like that's always the stories that I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Mine's less exciting, and I got into it a little older because of that. It was actually Freddy versus Jason. I was aware of the characters, Freddy and Jason and like Michael Myers, like, all the heavy hitters. But that came out in 2003. I was, let's see if I can do math on the fly, 14 at the time. So I was like in the the prime age where like for that kind of movie to be marketed towards me, even though it's obviously an R-rated movie. But I was just super intrigued with the idea. Like, again, I knew of them, but hadn't seen any of their movies. And I really fell in love with the soundtrack, actually, first. It came out and had, like, a lot of bands that I was into at the time on it. So I ended up wanting to familiarize myself with the movies that came before it, but, like, not having time to sit through 17 movies. So I rented the first Elm Street and the first Friday the 13th, thinking like, oh, I'll piece together like everything that comes in between. Not realizing Jason's not even in the first Friday the 13th, so that like blew my mind at the time, but like was very weird. But anyway, I saw Freddy vs. Jason, loved it. Went back, saw all the Fridays and Elm Streets, and then Halloween, and then kind of just worked my way through there. The Romero Dead movies, just started with the classics and then dug deeper and deeper and deeper, which I'm still doing now, is trying to find things I haven't seen before that are cool.
Do you find that covering merchandise on the site leads you back towards specific older titles as merch comes out for them, or?
Absolutely. I mean, especially with the boutique Blu-ray labels. There's like, the bigger ones like Arrow and Scream Factory, even they do a lot of obscure stuff that I haven't seen before. But then you get into like the nitty gritty, like the Vinegar Syndromes and companies like that who are just putting out stuff that like no one's ever heard of, or very few people, like regional movies that have never been on DVD before, let alone Blu-ray. And that's such a joy. Like you never know when you're going to just find this hidden gem that you've never seen before. And it changes your world.
And obviously you cover a lot more than just film. You cover video games, though not quite as heavy as some other websites. You cover posters, and you cover original poster art and boutique poster designers. You cover a lot of vinyl releases, which I think is awesome too, because that's another place that in the last few years has really come alive. Maybe in the last 6 years, as the older soundtracks are getting reissued, and even new work in the vein of classic soundtracks. So how broke are you running this site?
Very broke. It does not bring in much money, and it costs me a lot of money. No, it is cool. I won't lie, I occasionally get hooked up with free stuff for a review or to show off on social media or whatever, and that is awesome. That's obviously not the reason to do it, because it's way more. If I worked a regular job for half the hours I put into the Broke R fan, I'd have enough money to buy all this stuff. But it is definitely a perk of the job. You get like cool mailers, cool promotional items every once in a while. So very broke, to answer your question.
So you may be in the most unique position to answer this. This is a typical question. That's just like the how did you get into horror question. But I think you might be in the best position to answer this of anyone I've ever had on.
Ooh, all right.
So what do you think the state of horror is in 2020?
Oh, I think it is in flux. And it kind of always is. I mean, it's the horror genre has always been kind of ebbs and flows. But I think now more than ever, it's really exciting because the independent voices are starting to get a little more traction. Now it's, it's harder than ever to get an independent movie made. But once you have it made, you can get, you're on iTunes next to whatever major theatrical, well, when we could release movies in theaters. But, you're next to The Invisible Man or whatever, even though your movie was made for a fraction of the budget. And to the person renting it, they don't know the difference. If they've never heard of your movie, they just think they see, oh, it's the same $3 or whatever. And sometimes that can hinder you because they expect it to be as good, or I shouldn't say as good, but have the same production value as a Hollywood movie. But I think the rise of independent voices is very exciting. Studios are taking notice because now you'll see people with a hit movie on whatever, whether it be Netflix or Prime or whatever, then they get a studio deal. I also think it's exciting that we're seeing more social commentary in movies. I shouldn't say more because that's been a long time, especially in the horror genre. But particularly now that we're hearing more voices from communities who weren't otherwise heard from, whether it be, LGBTQ plus Black, female filmmakers, just people who are normally marginalized or previously marginalized are now finally getting the chance to kind of get on the soapbox and show what they've got. And it's like, why weren't we doing this sooner? Like, we need more diverse stories.
Well, the horror genre has always been on the more diverse of all the genres. I mean,
Yeah,
so it is nice. I always say more voices are always better no matter where they come from.
absolutely.
So that's the good thing. I don't particularly like singling out any specific group because I think at a certain point that becomes counterproductive to the whole idea of that group getting normalized, right? As part of just the entertainment landscape. So it's a careful thing. But I'll say, like, this year's best film, in my opinion, so far is Relic, and it's directed by a woman, and it is definitely a film about women and aging. So that's a concept that we wouldn't have seen even 5 years ago. Probably make it to the screen,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
it's certainly not get a. IFC gave it a drive-in movie theater release, and now it's available as an on-demand title. It's not a premium title, but it's a $7 title, so it's not bargain basement either. It's getting treated serious. So I agree we are in flux, and I think there are a lot of new voices. I'm not one for overt politics in the horror genre as much as I like the idea of great stories coming from different places. So I think it's a careful balancing act there too, because we have to be careful. Like, bad writing can't be excused by good intentions, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I come down on the issue. But I always want to hear voices from different places. The movie Under the Shadow from Iran that came out a couple years ago.
I like that one a lot. Yeah.
It's a tremendously important film in a lot of ways, but it still worked in every way it needed to as a horror film as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm fully supporting of the new voices. I just never want to see them. I never want it to be a crutch that they are a new voice, right? So when you look at the genre today, you mentioned that we have these new voices coming up, and I agree that that's where all the excitement is. I had Aaron Kuntz on the show 2.5 weeks ago. I have no sense of time when lockdown is in effect.
Time is a blur now. It doesn't matter.
It could be a month. It could be tomorrow. I don't really know. But and of course he was the creator of Scare Package and the upcoming Pale Door, which comes out in a week, I think. And he was talking about how much more avenues for distribution have opened up to the small independent. Now, your website has actually kind of facilitated that in a way. That's circumvention in a circumventious way, but also in a direct way. So just by covering everything on a kind of level playing field, you've kind of given a voice to those releases. But you also have a side venture involving VHS, do you not?
I do, yeah. Let's see, again, time is a blur. 2018, it was almost exactly 2 years ago. It was July 13th, 2018. We released Victor Crowley on Blu-ray, the fourth Hatchet movie. On VHS, not Blu-ray. Big difference.
Yeah, that was covered, I think.
Yeah. Basically, one of my very good friends and I were talking about ways to just kind of, expand Brokarfin as a brand and like do something exciting with it and something different. I mean, he had come to me like saying he's the Witter Entertainment with whom I released the VHS tapes. He was pitching me stuff like, do like specialized posters or whatever. But like there's like Mondo and like so many other good companies and artists who do that. It was, again, same with when I started Brokarfin. I wanted something different that like had a demand but didn't have a bunch of people already filling that demand. So we talked back and forth. Eventually brought up the VHS and we landed on that. Got very lucky to work with Adam Green to do Victor Crowley as our first release. That was huge. I'm a big fan of his work and him as a person. So that was really exciting to like launch with that instead of just like some small movie, which we put out a lot of really cool small movies, but to kind of come out swinging for the fences like that, I think really helped us get momentum immediately. And we've released, God, I don't even know the number of titles now, maybe 20, 25, something like that in the last 2 years. Some really cool stuff, really exciting stuff. Color Out of Space, Terrifier, Puppet Master, Littlest Reich, just to name a handful. And it's been really cool. We keep it super limited. Most runs are limited to 50 or 100. Some of the bigger titles, like those I just mentioned, have slightly larger runs. But we want to make it, we call it a functioning collectible because it is a fully functional, officially licensed VHS tape, cropped to 4:3, painstakingly cropped.
Is that?
But it also looks really cool if you are a collector like myself. If you're a fellow broke horror fan, it looks awesome, as a display piece on a shelf because we do big clamshell artwork. Sometimes original artwork if we can afford it. Sometimes we just get a cool poster. But either way, we try to make a package out of it. We usually get letters from the director if they're available, or we have some of our tapes have exclusive introductions from the cast. So we try to make like a special event out of it for the few people who are into it.
So, I mean, just on a technical side of this, are you still able to purchase Virgin videotape, or do you have to repurpose at this point?
It is all new stock. However, you can't really purchase it new. We, giving away our trade secrets here, we usually just buy it on eBay in like bulk. It's like people who were probably trying to either sell their own movies or whatever, or just tape a bunch of stuff off of HBO in the 90s. But people who just sell like, oh, I have 100 blank tapes still in shrink wrap for whatever, So that's normally what we do. I think they're still being manufactured in like China, maybe the shells, but I don't know about the tape itself. Thankfully, we haven't run into any problems with running low, and we've put out like over 1,000 tapes now, and not individual titles, but 1,000 tapes total. And still have some really cool titles coming up. We're actually, within the next month, announcing our biggest title yet, and releasing our biggest title yet soon after that. I can't say what it is yet, but it's crazy that we're putting out this movie on VHS.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
and as big as the VHS collectible market is, this is something that you could do as a boutique thing, as a limited edition forever. Now, the other thing I want to point out to the people who might not be aware of this is the price tag on these limited editions is not crazy.
We struggled with the price a lot when we were launching because we wanted to make sure it was affordable. We also want to make sure people would pay it because it is such a niche thing. We did find it has a small but hungry audience for it, which is cool. We have some regulars who will just buy our tapes based on our sole recommendation, which is something like we're curating a collection for them. It's a really cool, humbling experience. But yeah, we sell our tapes for $20. Some have variants that are like even more limited edition covers that we sell for $25. So we try to keep it affordable, about the same as you'd pay for a new Blu-ray.
And that's incredible because you would imagine someone deciding to go into something like VHS collectors and just milking them for everything they could get. I could see that. I mean, even Charles Band literally did that 2 years ago.
Yes, he did.
So, I mean, it's not a crazy idea that someone would take advantage, and you guys haven't done that. So I think that's really important too. And it also shows where your heart is, because it's one thing to put a website up, even a great website up, even an essential website up, but it's a different thing to kind of actually give back to the community and give them something that has value.
Well, thank you. I mean, as a collector myself, I understand the struggle. And it is, you would laugh if I showed you like the cost sheets for what our profit margins are on these. Like, it's ridiculous the amount of work we put into it, but it's literally just James and I, two people doing everything. Like I crop all the movies myself down to 4:3 with the filmmaker's approval. So
do you do the pan and scan yourself?
Pan and scan myself, yes.
Jesus Christ.
Well, again, that was another debate we had early on. It was like, if you don't pan and scan and you got a widescreen movie, you're watching it on a new TV, like you're just gonna have black bars on all four sides. So as long as the filmmaker approves, we do it. It's crazy time consuming, but we found like it helps the nostalgia and the viewers seem to like it. And then we pack and ship. I should say James, he gets the credit here. He packs and ships every single tape himself. We get existing or created commissioned cover art, but then I do the physical graphic design layout for the tapes. It really is. It's just the two of us, so that does help keep the costs down a little bit.
That is craziness. Lost Cunningham does have a question for you. It's a little off topic to what we're talking about right at the moment, but I think it's a really cool question.
Bring it up.
He says, What's Alex's favorite horror T-shirt company? Not Fright Rags.
Well, first I am going to plug Fright Rags because that is my favorite. I'm currently wearing a Fright Rags shirt. I love their stuff. That's tough. I like probably Cavity Colors. I like their Devin Whitehead, who's like their in-house designer pretty much. He does a lot of really cool stuff. Gutter Garbs is they're like slightly newer on the scene, but have a lot of cool stuff. They have some simpler designs, which I appreciate sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the collages. The endless collages that look like rap covers from the 90s, I'm not a big fan of.
I like it to an extent. Some people are just like, I don't want to walk around with a big poster on me, and I get that. I don't know. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, but and Terror Threads, they're another good one who do cool original art.
And T-Bob79 has a question. What about a Betamax version? Let's get super specialist. I only say this because I still have a working Betamax player.
I won't lie. I am 31. I don't even think I've seen a Betamax in person in my life.
I have a video on my channel where I'll take you through almost every dead format that exists in person.
Here's my chance. Obviously I know of it. I know there was the war between VHS and Betamax, but I had the VCR growing up, so I never even knew of Betamax. But hey, maybe if VHS somehow
you won't sell them, dude. You won't sell them. The truth is, people are going to buy what they could still use in some format. These collectors own VCRs.
Yeah, exactly. And we've had people seek out. They buy it again. They start as a collectible, just like something to show off on their shelf, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I found a VCR at the thrift store. Right now, I'm watching it, and it's even better." And I think that's really cool to me, especially like kids who are 20 or whatever. They maybe never even had a VCR in their life. It's cool to see that kind of passing on, even though obviously I should openly recognize it's not as good quality, but if that's how you first saw a lot of these movies, there's definitely a nostalgia to it, and it's different. I think some of these titles play maybe not better, but you might appreciate them differently on VHS. A movie like Terrifier or even Victor Crowley, which are very much kind of made in the mold of these 80s slashers. There's something kind of, I don't know, magical, for lack of a better word, about seeing it in that the 4:3 crop, a little bit gritty, a little bit grainy. Also makes the effects look a little more realistic because it's hiding some of the themes.
So hey, let's go there. So I love John Carpenter's The Thing. However, I never will upgrade The Thing beyond the Blu-ray I bought because I don't watch the Blu-ray. I watched that film on DVD because as much as I love Rob Bottin's special effects, I got to be honest, on Blu-ray, a little bit of the magic is gone. It looks a little bit more rubbery. The prosthetics are a little more obvious, and I don't want that. I won't go back to VHS necessarily because I think the DVD is a nice middle ground. But I mean, they announced the thing on 4K, and I could not imagine. I think it'll hurt the movie.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. We're literally watching these in our homes in better quality than these have ever been projected. Sometimes, I mean, even obviously you're getting more definition when you're seeing it in a theater. But I mean, when it came out, you're watching some beat up old print. It wasn't like you were seeing this pristine, cleaned up, restored version.
From a projector that might not have been taken that great a care of because it was in constant use. Yeah.
So now it's these are things the filmmakers, especially when practical effects were still, the only way to do effects. They were using that to their advantage, using the darkness, using the murkiness to kind of hide the seams. And like you said, yeah, now we're sometimes seeing this for better or for worse.
And if T-Bob is willing to petition you for Betamax, I say go even more obscure, and I want to see a Video 2000 version, which was the format that didn't even make it to America before it died.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. Is it a disc?
It's a tape. It's a tape. It's not compatible with any other tape format, and it basically survived in France and the former Soviet Union for a while, but then died.
Bring it on.
That would be the ultimate collectible. That'd be Terrifier like you've never seen it before because you can't actually watch it that way. There's not a working player in the world at this point, I'm sure. So now I want to also point out that your busy time of the year is about to begin, because I was out and about today, and this is what I saw. So if that is where we're at, and we're going to see the Halloween season prop up, that means a lot more merch is coming out. I can't help but think that means you have a lot of work in front of you for the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, we just had Comic-Con at home last week, and it's been like, I'm still like posting stuff from the fallout from that I somehow missed. So it's busy, basically starting from Comic-Con through Halloween. It's definitely the busy season for horror merchandise, and then you still get some like rollover for Christmas time. But yeah, it's exciting as a fan, as a person who buys all this stuff. Well, not as exciting for my wallet, but like exciting for me to see it all.
Does it annoy you when you go to other websites and notice that they've basically just cut and paste off your website to put together their holiday shopping guides? I know that literally happens, by the way.
Yes, you're not wrong. I wouldn't say annoyed, but I wouldn't say you're wrong by saying annoyed. I get it, because again, I worked for some of those bigger sites doing like the news cycle stuff, and it was literally sometimes just be like, well, just keep refreshing all the other horror sites, and whatever they post, you post it and get it up as fast as possible. Excuse me, as fast as you can. So it's like, they're in a position, they're actually getting paid to do it, so like they need to create content. So I don't begrudge them. Certain sites do give credit, which is very nice. Even if it's not like, obviously none of my content is original. I'm getting it from elsewhere, but they'll at least be like, oh, I saw on Brokar Fan or whatever. Bloody Disgusting is pretty good about doing that.
So also, your social media has obviously grown. How much of that leads back to the site, or is it bi-directional? Does they each feed each, or less? So your Twitter, does it push people towards the site, or does the site push people towards just Twitter?
So I didn't mention this in the genesis of the site, but I did. It started as a Twitter page before I had a formal website, where it was just like basically like retweeting news from other sites and like posting my own tweets about like, here's this movie coming out on this date or whatever. Here's where you can buy it. And then I was like, oh, I should make this a website. So the Twitter has been around longer than the .com. And because of that, the Twitter, we just hit 50,000 followers, which is insane. And it's definitely my number one source of traffic is my own Twitter account. I also I was super late on the Instagram game. I actually joined Instagram just to start like showing off our VHS when we released that. So I'm only on Instagram 2 years, but like that's like fun. I have fun on Instagram. And then I have a Facebook that's like, I try to post on it once every couple days, but without putting money behind it. There's Facebook just buries business pages, so it's like whatever. But yeah, Twitter is the main source of traffic for the site. The site also, people click through the site and follow on mostly Instagram these days because that's the newer one.
So I want to show you my favorite of your tweets. Your blood pressure just went up, didn't it?
Yeah,
no, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. So first off, I mean, I'm just a huge fan of House by the Cemetery to begin with, but it was shocking to me because the house is not blue anymore.
Yes, you might not recognize it unless you can recognize the silhouette. It's still shaped the same.
Oh yeah, yeah. So are you a huge Italian horror fan?
I would say big. I'd hesitate to use the word huge because I'm definitely not an expert, but like I enjoy it. The exterior filming location from House by the Cemetery from that picture is in Situate, Massachusetts, which is where my girlfriend grew up. So like when I found that out, I was like, oh, we gotta go.
Yeah.
So it's like surreal to visit any film location for like a movie you love, but particularly one that like, I mean, I don't know, I've never seen anyone else really post pictures from there, so it was like, I don't know, it was cool. It was exciting. If you're ever in Situate, Massachusetts, beautiful coastal town, also home to House by the Cemetery.
I might need you to send me an address because it might be worth the road trip. I'm lucky. I'm about a half hour on a bad day from Camp Nobi Scobie, the original filming location of Friday the 13th.
Cool.
So, I can go to Blairstown Diner for lunch So I know the thrill, and it never gets old, by the way. It never stops being like, oh my God, I'm there.
Yeah.
But House by the Cemetery would definitely be one. It's my favorite Fulci. I am a huge Fulci fan.
I'm glad to hear that. I feel like it didn't really connect with me until that new Blu-ray came out last year. That as like top tier Fulci. I think The Beyond and Zombie are probably my two favorites for different reasons. The Beyond, I think, is his best work like as a director, and Zombie is probably his most cohesive work. But House by the Cemetery is now like my third favorite because there's like 50% Fulci weirdness in a good way, and then like 50% of like a genuinely good haunted house movie. I just think it works on multiple levels that way.
I think it's genuinely scary. That's the thing. Like when it showcases how good Fulci could be about ratcheting up tension, not just about the violence itself.
Right.
The scene where Bob is being held against the door and his father is trying to hack through the door with an axe is a genuinely tense scene.
Yeah.
And you don't, and you get that in other Fulci films, but you don't get it with quite the level of tension as I find in House by the Cemetery. I also just love the fact that, I mean, we can. At some point, I'm going to put together. I make videos that I call storytelling autopsies, where I kind of deconstruct what the writing has done, and a lot of people don't understand the end of that film. So at some point, I am going to do a video on House by the Cemetery and kind of lay bare what's going on at that ending, which everyone thinks is just a head scratcher. But I think that Fulci, for me, more than Argento, captures the nightmare logic of European horror really well. I think Sergio Martino did as well, and he doesn't get the credit. But I think Fulci, unfortunately, people basically wanted him to make Zombie over and over.
Yeah.
And certainly when the money dried up, the films don't look as good. There's no question about that. But the imagination was still there right through.
I will say, of the two, I'm more in the Argento camp. Suspiria is one of my top 10 of all time. But I do appreciate Fulci, of course.
I love Argento too. I just, on the whole, once you get into the 80s with Argento, I start fading with him. And it doesn't.
See, I like him until we hit the 90s, for the most part.
Well, let me be clear. I mean, I love the 70s work, and then I get, and I love Inferno. I'm that guy. I'm the last Inferno fan. But then you get, I think even like Tenebrae, to be honest with you, it's great. But it's not Bird with the Crystal Plumage to me. It's not.
I take Tenebrae over Bird with the Crystal Plumage personally.
Would you take it over Deep Red?
No, I'd say those are my top three: Suspiria, Deep Red, Tenebrae.
Okay, that's fair. I could live with that. But then, Phenomenon is really unfocused. I like it a lot, but I can't say I love it.
Yeah.
And it gets harder than Opera and Stendhal Syndrome. Yes, I like them.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like Opera.
I love them. And then we get to Card Player and Giallo, and
even I do think, particularly now, as we've seen him decline even worse into worse territory. His last couple of movies.
We can talk Dracula.
I'm starting to appreciate some of his late 90s, early 2000s, like those movies a little bit more. Certainly, nothing's going to compare to his classic work, but I think there's some value in them at least versus something like Dracula. To me, it just doesn't have any redeeming qualities to it beyond being like what was everybody thinking when they made this?
Well, Dracula turns into a giant praying mantis that looks like a color form. That's something, right?
That's something, all right.
It's something. Okay, so Tim Lost Cunningham is going to start shit. So I'm going to bring it up.
Uh-oh.
And I just want you to be honest. Don't try and satisfy anyone with it. Okay, I'll ask Alex the question. What does he think of Halloween Kills?
Okay. Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween is my favorite movie. So I'm a Halloween apologist, I guess you call it. Like I'll watch like Halloween Resurrection and have a good time. It's not like a good movie, but it's fun, I think. And I think I'm getting off topic here, but I think Halloween Resurrection.
It's fine. We love this. We love
Resurrection gets more hate than it deserves because yes, Busta Rhymes is terrible and like everything he does in that movie is ridiculous.
Tyra Banks is actually worse, I think.
Well, yes, I was terribly miscast just to
Yeah, they shouldn't have been there.
But I think like the webcam aspect, the reality show aspect of it was like way ahead of its time. Killing off Laurie was stupid, but I think there's like at least 30% of a really good movie there. But I digress. I really liked Halloween 2018. I thought it was a good return to form. Not quite my favorite sequel, but certainly better than most of them. I like almost everything they did with it. And because of that, I'm super excited about Halloween Kills. The title is weird to say still. I'm sure I'll get used to it after talking about it ad nauseum once it comes out next year now. But I'm excited. I think it's cool they're doing like a little trilogy. I see how respectful they were to the Laurie character in.
Oh, now you tripped my wire. That is not Laurie Strode on screen.
Well, it's Laurie Strode 40 years later.
No, Laurie Strode was an intelligent young woman, resourceful, but also had a strong maternal instinct, whereas her peers did not. She was, in a way, almost a perfect female character for the late 70s. I'm sorry, that character moves out of Haddonfield if she feels that she needs to prepare her entire life for the inevitable return of Michael Myers. It just doesn't make sense.
There's definitely some conveniences, maybe a little contrived to make the plot work. The one thing I do hate about that movie, or I shouldn't say hate, but my least favorite aspect of that movie is the doctor with Sartain, whatever. Sartain. Like the twist of him being bad. Like you're bringing back Michael Myers. Like you don't need a second bad guy. And I get he was just a plot device to get Michael to Laurie without the sister.
But it still doesn't work.
No, I agree. It just
because they leave. He kills the doctor. He gets in the cop comes up. He gets in the cop car and he drives to Laurie's house. But he's supposed to be following the granddaughter. That's the whole concept. But she arrives after him, so that doesn't work.
That's a good point. I didn't even think of that.
But to be fair, that's all reshoots. The Sartain subplot is all reshoots. The entire last act of the film, the basement trap, that's all reshoots. That was not in the original version. So, as is tradition with the Halloween films, there's 7 versions on a cutting room floor somewhere, and
I would love to see whatever that original cut looked like, just as the completist and the fan.
With Laurie driving the transport van off the road and being responsible for the whole thing.
Oh, really? See, I don't even know. See, I avoided. I know there was a lot of like spoilers out of test screenings and stuff, but I avoided all that going into the movie, and then never really caught up with it. So that's interesting.
So I'm going to suggest that you don't visit Jacob's house because he says if someone speaks positively about resurrection in my house, they are executed. It's a personal policy.
I will just yell things from like the street, like trick or treat, motherfucker.
We watched on the panelist show that I'm on now called Region Free when the new season starts. We did a watch along of Resurrection, and what saved its ass is that we watched the Rob Zombie films after it.
Now, is that you're saying you hate those more, or it was?
Oh yeah, they're worse.
Okay. See, even those I find redeemable. I do have. I don't know. Oh, it's mirrored. There's like a Halloween 2 poster. I can't do this mirrored. Halloween 2 poster by me.
I noticed.
An old video store poster. That's why it's just taped to a door. It's not like my favorite movie, but I find redeeming things in both of those two, particularly Halloween 2. I think it feels less like a Halloween movie, but more like an unhinged Rob Zombie movie. His remake, I have a lot of issues with, but there's also some stuff I like in it.
I just think to be, if I'm being absolutely candid about the whole Rob Zombie era, it's that I really wish that they just hired him and said, make a slasher film, do whatever you want, and it wasn't Halloween. If those 2 films existed without existing in the Halloween universe, I'd be a lot more forgiving. I think most of my problems are I just don't think they hit the mark, and they weren't meant to hit the mark. So that might not be fair, but I had a pretty miserable experience with the remake in the theater.
I think Michael Myers needs no backstory, particularly in a first movie in the franchise. This is supposed to be a reboot. I think that was a uninspired idea to make him like your stereotypical kind of bullied kid. Kills animals, comes from an abusive home, broken home. However, I do think that portion of the movie, again, for what it is, not for a Halloween movie, but for just a slasher movie, is really good. Like the performances are really good. I think it's the best Cherry Moon Zombie's ever been.
That's probably fair. That's
And
probably
I
fair.
don't just like her. I know some people just like hate her in all of his movies. I think she's decent, but I think she's particularly good as Mrs. Myers there. But then we get to the second half, and it's like the entirety of John Carpenter's Halloween crammed into 1 hour. And I feel like if the original movie wasn't so ingrained in my head, the first time I watched Rob Zombie's Halloween, I would have no idea who half those characters were, because there was no development. It was just like, oh, here's the movie you saw again, but now we say fuck a lot more.
A lot more.
I hope we can swear here. Sorry.
Oh, there's no censorship here.
That's a sidebar, but I do think Rob Zombie's a very talented director, has a good visual sense. I think he really needs a co-writer to kind of get him out of his own tropes. He's become almost a parody of himself with his last couple of movies, between 31 and 3 from Hell. It's like if you were to like imagine like a Saturday Night Live sketch about a Rob Zombie movie, it would be like those movies. And I think he's better than that, because I think even Halloween notwithstanding, I think The Devil's Rejects is a really good film. I think House of a Thousand Corpses has a lot of cool ideas. It's just it suffers from being a first-time filmmaker's movie and studio interference. And I think Lords of Salem is maybe his most accomplished work. I think that's underrated.
I think he's just one of those guys that needs to work with some people who can center him. And the writing is by far the biggest problem. He can shoot a film. That's not a problem. But I would like to see him have his I don't know, his team that can bring him down to earth.
Yeah, it's just the over reliance on like every movie's the same redneck characters. Like, yeah. And I get you write what you know or whatever, you know, what you're comfortable with, but it's just like it's every movie, even when like you said, like the Halloween universe, it feels out of place. But I don't know. I still watch all his movies. I'm still hoping to love another one the same way I did some of his earlier ones.
So before we get to your foray into movies, which I want to make sure we don't not get to, which is not English at all, by the way.
Okay, double negative. Threw me off.
Yeah, exactly. You have been spotlighting some films that I think are some of the most important films recently to come out. I mean, you recently tweeted about The Pool, which I saw last year, and I thought it was way superior to Crawl. It's a movie with balls and emotion. Like, you actually care about those characters. I mean, not that there's a lot of characters, but it also would go places that are kind of like jaw-dropping. Without giving away the ending, it takes a taboo. 30 years ago it wouldn't have been a taboo, but today you can't do it. And it just does it and holds on it. And I think that's incredibly brave. And I know people were uncomfortable about it, but you know what? Aren't we in horror to be a little bit uncomfortable? Isn't that kind of the point? So, like, and Blood Vessel, you also recently stated, and I loved Blood Vessel. I love that it returned vampires to monster movies, as opposed to like dramas with undead people, or whatever they've been for the last 30 years, which some good films cause that. Your Lost Boys and your Near Darks, I get it. Those are good films, but then that led to The Twilight and, The Vampire Assistant and all that stuff. So it was nice to see it pulled back where it kind of belongs and hasn't been for a long time. So do you think those type of movies that are like indie or smaller or are foreign are really where your focus is at this point?
Yeah, certainly in my viewing habits. So because I don't do much editorializing on the site, I do Blu-ray reviews, but it's mostly again, boutique label stuff, like re-releases. It's rarely new releases, although occasionally. But I will just whatever I'm watching, if I enjoy it, or sometimes if I don't enjoy it, but I try to stay positive. I only say negative stuff if it's like a studio movie, usually. But I'll tweet out my thoughts. Just like, here's this movie, here's where you can see it, here's what I thought of it, in however many characters you have on Twitter now.
I don't know. All I know is I do enough ads, and eventually they tell me I can't go any further.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like a fun little like mini review, basically. And yeah, to answer your question, I think that's what I'm watching most these days. That's the most exciting. Like we were talking about these smaller filmmakers who are the voices you want to keep an eye on. And I didn't mention, but should have foreign titles as well. Seems to be a lot more exciting these days than what's happening in Hollywood in terms of studio movies. Yeah, I find Shudder. I'll watch basically. I'll try. They release basically a new movie every week, and I'll try to catch it. Within the first couple of days it comes out, and then tweet my thoughts about it. Obviously, I'll also check out some of the new VOD stuff or whatever is new to Netflix. That stuff's a lot more hit or miss. But Shudder, I find pretty consistently. It might not always blow your mind, but it's like at worst, it's like a mediocre movie. It's never like, oh, that was a waste of time.
It feels curated, whereas Netflix doesn't. Yeah.
Exactly. Way to put it.
So I have to ask you about a specific movie, and you haven't seen it, then you have homework.
Okay.
You can get back to me in whatever form you want, but did you check out last year's Game Over, the Indian film from Ashwin Saravanan?
No.
You like slashers. We established that.
Yes.
I think it is probably the most I want to watch my words here because I don't want to give away anything about the movie. I think it is the most literate, smart, intelligent slasher film, but it's still a slasher film ever made. It's on my top 10 lists of all time.
Wow. Is it streaming somewhere?
It is streaming on Netflix, but you have to search for it.
Okay.
It won't come up if you just scroll. You'll never find it. And when you do find it, you want the Tamil language version, which does have English subs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Your homework is to email me to remind me to watch that after we're done doing this.
I will do so. I might even make it easy for you. I'm just trying to, with that movie in particular, it's become a real battle cry for me because it really was the first time. Well, you'll see Hellfest behind me, which I also had an incredibly good experience because it really feels like Halloween to me this season. And even like the Halloween movies don't really feel like Halloween to me, and that movie does. But because I was lucky enough to see it in a theater because I have Indian theaters near me. And Game Over made me feel like I used to feel in the 80s when I'd, sneak into the movie theater underage and see a slasher film. It made me feel all those feelings again, and it was strong, and it was smart, though. It was a film for adults. And I just...
You're checking all my boxes.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you like what A24 have been doing?
Oh, yeah. I should have mentioned them, too, in like the Exciting Voices stuff, because basically all their horror output I've at least enjoyed to some extent.
Yeah. So I don't want to say it's like A24 because it definitely has its own flavor, which you'd imagine from it being from a different continent.
Yeah.
But it's that smart, that well done. And when you realize what they're doing and what they've done the whole movie, which after you see it, we're going to have to talk. But it doesn't have to be on the air, but we're going to have to talk. You're going to be blown away. I mean, the audacity to take something like a slasher film and do something really smart and cohesive with it is really cool.
I'm intrigued.
So Griffin is asking a question for you and Alex. What are the 3 worst studio horror films you've seen that have been released in the last 10 years?
Oh, I feel like I'd have to do like research to answer this question.
Probably Grudge 2020.
Oh, see, I did not mind that movie at all. I know everyone; it was like universally panned, like critically and fans. I thought it was like serviceable for what it was. It wasn't like the best Grudge. I didn't even think it was the worst Grudge. I thought it was better than Part 3.
I'm not sure I ever saw Part 3 though.
You didn't. It was like a direct-to-video one they released.
That's why I think I don't see it. But I've seen all the Juon films.
See, I've only seen like 2 or 3 of them.
If you get the opportunity, go back to the original 2 television movies that started it all, because the theatrical films that we got over here are not the first versions.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I believe there's 11 movies now.
I knew there was a ton. I think I've seen the first 2, and then the Ring versus the Grudge one,
which was I thought okay for what it was.
It was fun.
It didn't embarrass itself.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then I just watched the Netflix series, which I thought
I haven't watched it yet. But it's not. It doesn't take very long. It's like 2 hours, and you're done with the whole.
Yeah. I think it's like 6 45-minute episodes or whatever, something like that. Whatever that adds up to.
I would also say that I really, really detested, and if you've watched my reviews on my channel, you know this, but I really detested that Uncaged 20, however meters down sequel.
I didn't mind that one either, to be honest. I enjoyed the first one for what it is.
Wait. The first one's fine. The second one is Ocean Silt, the movie. It's
see, I didn't mind it. I think it had a roaring shark in it, if I recall correctly, which was that's but I thought it like had like some decent jump scares from what I recall. I'm trying to think. I can't think of one that I like outright like hated.
The Turning was just simply a missed opportunity. It wasn't actually bad. It was just very lightweight.
I haven't seen that yet. I mean, I heard such negative things. I haven't bothered yet, but I'll get around to it eventually.
Yeah, the biggest problem is they flubbed the ending, and to the point where most people say it just ends, which isn't true. It has an ending. It has an ending. It's just really not developed very well.
Yeah.
It's a tough question to come up with the stuff that you hate because you like kind of like you don't think about it ever again. You just kind of leave it on the floor of the theater.
Well, that's like this. I'd rather like vehemently hate a movie than just like forget it. You know what I mean? That's even worse. At least it sparks some reaction if you really hate it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of like very middling, mediocre movies that I can't even recall. Damn, I don't know. Maybe something will pop in my head at some point, but I can't.
That's fine. It's fine.
Wait, I got, and I won't even say it's the worst. It's just such a missed opportunity, and thankfully they of course corrected. But The Mummy with Tom Cruise, like who was asking for like another big action movie about the Mummy? It should have been like that Dark Universe should have been what we got with Invisible Man, which I like a lot. I just thought that was such a missed opportunity, and Tom Cruise was like a weird.
It was a weird choice.
I think almost every Tom Cruise movie is like pretty good, at least. But that one was just like his character was weird. He was like kind of sarcastic and funny sometimes. Like it felt like he was miscast. Like it was written for like a much younger, probably like a Hemsworth or something like that. And then when they got Tom Cruise, he brought in his script doctor to Tom Cruise it up a little bit. But there's still some of that like sarcastic, funny man hero in there, which is just like I don't know. Tom Cruise that's not really a strong suit.
The weirdest thing about that movie is this, and I'm more positive on the movie than most people are, but it's for reasons that I don't think most people consider important enough. I actually really like the villain. I think that not just going with an old Egyptian prince, there was something braver about that, and I like the idea of the stakes of the movie. I just feel that the leads, plural, were kind of a nightmare, to be honest with you. And it spent so much time trying to build a world for more sequels that it didn't bother having enough story for itself left.
That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, the whole Russell Crowe subplot was obviously shoehorned in to like get the Frankie to be the Nick Fury of this extended universe that never materialized, and it just like feels very forced. But even still, I mean, as like a dumb popcorn movie, like it wasn't the worst. It was just like one of those like I just don't see why that movie was made like for that budget.
I'm going to be in the minority, but I didn't like the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies either. So for the same reasons, by the way. I was a kid when those came out. I was like 10 when that first movie came out, so I was into it. Like I was the target demographic for that movie. But certainly looking back on it, it's like, why would you take this iconic horror character and turn it into like this action adventure for kids, basically? Yeah, Indiana Jones with monsters.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I will say Indiana Jones with monsters on paper sounds amazing, but like you can create your own character. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to use the Mummy.
Yeah. Okay, we have some questions coming in, so I have to choose this carefully. I'm gonna have to give you some backstory on this question. I fear even mentioning this.
Uh-oh.
So this involves the Friday the 13th series.
Okay, I'm on board.
So before we start this, you should know that I really dislike the fifth film, but not for the reasons that most people claim that everyone who dislikes it. I just think it looks cheap.
Dude, you're talking my language.
Okay, cool. Then I can just ask the question. Here it is. Is Friday 5 Alex's favorite Jason movie of the series? If not, why?
I will say it's I'll do a ranking at some point, but it's towards the bottom of my ranking, and again, not because it's not Jason.
No, that's not my problem either.
Like that feels like a cop out. I'm sure it felt like a huge cop out in 1985, but now it's like whatever. I think all the characters pretty much are annoying. I think, like you said, it feels cheap. I kind of the humor or attempts at humor are super misplaced. It just
Sitcom level.
Yeah, exactly. Just the hillbilly neighbors are terrible.
Yeah, when did Crystal Lake become like middle of Arkansas? I don't get that.
A lot of weird choices. Then there's stuff I enjoy about it. Like some of the humor works. The bring back Tommy Jarvis as an adult was cool. Like it has its merits, but it's definitely like probably bottom 3 or for the series for me, maybe bottom 5.
Everyone out there knows where it stands for me.
My favorite is part 4, the final chapter. I think it's like the perfect kind of distillation of the slasher genre at that time. I'm also a big fan of part 6 for the levity it brings without being, I mean, it's not like an outright horror comedy, but it's like, that's kind of similar to what, even though there's only 2 years between them in terms of production. Part 4 is like the perfect distillation. That's like the end of the golden age of slashers. That's everything that was good about from Halloween up till that point, kind of in one movie. And then Jason Lives feels like everything that's like, when you think of like fun 80s slasher, that's what I get from Jason Lives.
Well, Jason Lives, and by the way, I think our lists are going to probably be pretty similar. I mean, the first film is my favorite, so that's what we're going to probably differ there. But then Final Chapter, which was the first I saw in theaters. And then Jason Lives is a little bit lower, but it's not even middle of the pack. It's higher than that. But what I love about that movie is that it captures the levity and the feel of the late 40s Universal wave. It has that monster movie feel. It doesn't even feel really like a slasher film completely. It feels more like a monster movie. Jason is allowed to be this huge, bigger than life monster. Finally, he's allowed to be the Frankenstein monster or the Mummy, rather than just being, the slasher.
Right.
I think that movie that opening scene is the House of Dracula. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
I mean, so I really like, and I like the fact that it's stylized without calling attention to it being stylized. And there's a lot I like about Jason Lives. Whereas I feel like New Beginning just doesn't have a sense of style. It looks like pornography. It's written like a sitcom. It doesn't work for me. And I think we just pissed off about 5 people in the chat.
Well, that's what I love about, the Friday the 13th franchise and horror at large. Like, you can take a look at these movies that are objectively, some might be better made than others, but like A New Beginning is someone's like favorite horror movie, or like some random, 80s obscurity is like something somebody grew up loving.
The Kindred.
The Kindred. You don't get that with like whatever romantic comedies or dramas or whatever. And I think that's so cool. That's so special. Like the fact that we can have these like friendly debates and like, everyone goes home happy. Like we're not going to convince one another because everyone has their own personal tastes, and that's what makes the genre exciting, I think.
Well, it's borne out by the numbers. I give this number all the time because I want people to be very realistic about the future of home video. Physical media is nearly dead. I mean, it really is circling the drain. But it's interesting. We've lost 83% of the market in the last 13 years. That's huge. That's horrible. But if you look at the retailers, FYE is a good example of this. Their number one category for pre-recorded video sales is horror. And it's not new. It's not horror new releases, by the way. It is the boutique label releases.
Yeah.
It's one of the bright spots. Unfortunately, can that keep an entire industry alive? No. Just realistically. But horror is that genre where people will grow a passion. It's cultural. I know that sounds bizarre, but it is as much a cultural phenomenon as any genre of dramatic fiction can be.
Absolutely. And now more than ever, like I didn't grow up in the 80s. I was born in 89. but even when I was growing up, like just getting into horror movies with Freddy versus Jason, it was like just the very tip of the iceberg of like horror starting to be like normalized in terms of like merchandise and stuff. Like you could go to a store, you could go to like a specialty store usually, but like find like, you know, the McFarlane movie Maniacs or whatever that toy line was called. You could buy horror toys, but like now it's like it's everywhere. Like, you know, you can get a Funko Pop of like, you know, I can't think of the most obscure example, like whatever, the entire cast of the Lost Boys or whatever, which is awesome. But at the same time, it's, I don't know, it's weird, but also very telling how dedicated and passionate the horror fans are.
So Nico, who is a guy who I could spend hours with, but won't come on the show, says, speaking of water, what are your takes on Aja's Crawl or Seurat's The Shallows?
I actually liked both of them a lot. I said Halloween's my favorite movie. Jaws is my second favorite movie. So like I'll watch any of the aquatic, you know, horror creature feature type stuff. I thought The Shallows was like a lot of fun. Actually, both of those movies were a lot of fun, but the Shallows in particular seems to have, it had like an intensity, but also seemed to have like just a hint of like a self-awareness that they knew, like they're like, all right, we're not going to top Jaws. Nothing's ever going to top Jaws. So like let's have a little fun with this.
I like that movie a lot.
Yeah, I think I can't believe that didn't get a sequel, but 47 Meters Down, which again I thought was good, but that one got a sequel. I don't know.
The Shallows, when The Shallows was announced for 4K, I buy things on the format based on how much I'm going to watch it. I'm not going to spend more money if I'm not going to watch the movie often. It was a 4K purchase for me. I didn't have to think about it. I was like, yep. I actually think that Universal should have been smart and bought that thing because it was an indie and threw the Jaws name on it.
Yeah, I mean, they easily could. I remember seeing that when it came out. A few of the reviewers said, like, you know, if they just push this as Jaws 5 or whatever, Jaws the Return, something, you know.
Just give the last name Brody. Don't even explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, after the third and fourth films, come on. Who cares?
I mean, I agree. It's definitely tainted, but I think it's very telling that, like, basically, like, that and The Exorcist are, like, the only, you know, those kind of classic big titles that never got any sort of remake in the boom of remakes that we hit in like early 2000s through now.
The Exorcist got that television series, but
that's true. That's a great point. So really, only Jaws that I can think of as like, you know, the heavyweights of horror
from that era. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The problem with Jaws is it has become such a cultural phenomenon across the board. It's not just it. By the way, it is a horror film. I'm not going to let anyone give that crap argument that it's not. You use the word terror twice in his poster. I don't want to hear it. But Jaws is such a piece of Americana. If you screw it up, it means more than just a bad remake.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's the perfect film as far as I'm concerned in terms of everything, really. All aspects.
I just saw it at the drive-in, and it's not a perfect film, but it feels like a perfect film, and that's amazing. You want? Okay, so what happens to the barrels? Where do the barrels go?
They explode. Don't question that.
No, they just disappear. As soon as the cage gets introduced, they just disappear. But and there's if you watch closely, Hooper drops the stick twice.
Yeah. I mean, that's it.
But you know what? But you know what? The thing is, the film feels right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Like, did you notice that thing the first time you watched them, or like
no?
the time you watched them? Yeah.
This is the 90th time I've watched it in the drive-in. I went, wait, where's the damn barrels?
That is a good point.
I remember turning to people near me going, where are the barrels? And they're like, oh shit, where are the barrels? But no, I mean, the thing about Jaws that I think is amazing is that you have this horror setup. It's a monster in a confined area, like any other monster movie, really. But you care so much about the characters, despite the fact that the characters don't seem to be being written for you to care about. Maybe Brody to extent, but he's still portrayed as kind of a drunk. If you really watch, he's kind of a coward too. Kind of.
Yeah.
He's not a perfect person, and the two other guys in the boat are both kind of assholes in their own way. But you're invested in them, and they're sympathetic on a deeper level than what Hollywood screenwriters would probably write for them to be sympathetic. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, I get that absolutely. And I think that's part of the reason it's so enduring, because they are, it's not whatever Rambo or whatever versus Jaws. It's like the everyman. It's a flawed character, which doesn't get written, particularly in like a big blockbuster, very often. Not that they knew it was going to be a blockbuster, but
but it changed the movie business.
Yeah,
so.
it invented the blockbuster pretty much. And I know
I don't think you have Star Wars without Jaws. I don't.
Right, yeah, I agree.
The 1-2 punch of Exorcist and Jaws.
You alluded to earlier you were not a fan of Crawl, but I like that one. It was like a fun roller coaster ride of a movie. Definitely requires some suspension of disbelief, but I thought, like, if you strap yourself in, you're gonna have a good time. The first jump scare where the alligator comes out, or crocodile, I forget if the alligators or crocodile in that, excuse me, but bursts out through the stairs, like that got me, and it's like it takes a lot for a jump scare to get me these days. I just thought it was a lot of fun.
I want to make it clear. I like Crawl. I don't like it enough to own.
Okay, fair enough.
It's one of those movies I'm glad I went to see. I had my problems with it. Again, I just think I think the whole dog thing is really cheap. If you put a dog in a film, but you won't pull the trigger on it, then making all the fake dog in jeopardy stuff is just like it's a little bit too mechanical of a attempt to reach the audience for me. That's not saying that the dog had to die. It's just saying that it felt very cheap to keep cutting back the dog barking, so the audience would be like, I hope nothing happens to the dog.
Yeah, it was definitely manipulative.
Yeah, especially when you have like the people who loot the gas station, and the alligators just wipe them out and nothing. You're like, and this dog is still around. It's the Newt problem for me. I mean, I know you probably love Aliens, and we're not going to go there, but Newt can't live, and the film make a bit of sense. So it was the same problem to me. It's like, please just treat the audience like we're not there. Act like this is just a story that's happened, and then I'm good. But once you start playing with, well, the audience would really not like us to do that, so let's play on their fears, but we'll win them over by not actually stepping over the line. I hate that stuff. I
think on the flip side of that same coin, though, I think killing the dog has now become such a, maybe not now, but because it is a way to toy with the audience. Like, that's also a way to get like easy sympathy, or easy way to get you to hate the villain, depending on what it is. Killing your pet. So I don't know. I just try to just leave pets out of movies, I guess, is the solution here. I don't know.
Unless you have a good reason to include one. I agree with that. I think the other problem is just that you create certain weird problems, like the final chapter you mentioned as your favorite Friday. Gordon jumping, being thrown, pushed, levitating out the window, whatever happens, because it's not real clear. Yeah. They introduced a dog. They didn't want to just belly out of it like the Crawl problem, so we end up with this real head scratcher. Like, what do we even make of that? So I think the better move is just keep your animals out.
Yeah, it makes it clear, and no one's gonna think twice about it.
No. Unless you're willing to do something dramatically that makes a lot of sense, which I would say the pool does.
Yeah.
So they're talking about the Psycho remake in the chat, because they were talking about Psycho and Jaws as the two films that should never be touched, and obviously Psycho already was.
Got a remake, and then got Bates Motel.
I don't watch much television. That's a real blackout spot for me.
I watched the first guy. I love Psycho too. Psycho also, although I think Psycho 2 is pretty good too. But I love Psycho, so I was, cautiously optimistic about the TV series. Watched it first, I think, 2 or 3 episodes, and then checked out. But I heard it got a lot better in the later seasons. But it's too much of a time commitment. Like, there's too much good stuff out there to waste on stuff like that, in my opinion. But I don't know, maybe someday. But the Psycho remake, I think it's a fascinating experiment, but a terribly flawed one, a failed one even.
It's like a Warhol film, right? Like, okay, you filmed the guy sleeping for 12 hours. I get it. I watched it once. I never need to go back.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things to see. I don't know what Vince Vaughn brings to Norman Bates, I guess. But
not the worst casting. Just I would really like them to go back to the block novel if they have to do it again, which I feel like it's inevitable they will do it again. Just make him overweight and pasty faced and not attractive and not suave, and make him the Norman Bates of the novel. Why not do that? Because you're not gonna top Anthony Perkins. It's not gonna happen.
I agree. I feel the same. Carrie, they've made what 3 times, 4 times if you count the TV series or sequel or whatever.
And there's another in development as we speak.
Of course, and like I get it, Stephen King's hot, and like that's a great story. But similar to Norman Bates in the novel, Carrie is like this overweight, pimple-faced girl. She's not like this. She's not Sissy Spacek, and like Sissy Spacek nailed it. Don't get me wrong, the part that she was written as she was written in the script. But if you're going to make it again, I mean, why not go back to the source material and do something a little more true to it, or at least give us something different? I think all the renditions, the remakes or new adaptations of Carrie, whatever you want to call them, have been decent at least, but haven't really brought anything new to the table that De Palma didn't already like perfect.
No, De Palma knew what to keep from the story, and his additions didn't hurt anything.
Right.
So I think that film is as good as a adaptation that King has actually ever received. The Shining is, of course, a side story that comes with all kinds of asterisks and things. So
yeah,
but,
Shining, amazing movie, one of my favorites, but a terrible King adaptation.
But I think on some levels it was the smartest way to betray the novel ever, because there's things like the topiary scenes that they were never going to work.
No,
this is not going to work. And, listen, bringing the subtext that Kubrick brought is incredibly bold in 1979 when he was shooting it. It couldn't be done today. So
yeah, I think it's an incredible film.
Right. So let's talk about you in movies, though. So you are someone who has an IMDb page.
That is the best way I've ever been called a filmmaker before. I'm going to start introducing myself.
Well, you've been involved in making films, right?
Yes.
So filmmaker works for me. It would be if I called you a director, then I'd have to justify that, right? If like somebody were to ask, I call myself a filmmaker. Now, thus far, I've only directed shorts. I've worked on features, but only written and directed shorts. So if you go into Walmart right now and walk down that aisle that's going to be gone by Christmas of pre-recorded media, it will. They're going down to 2 end caps. You'll see probably on the second or third row of that tiny section that they don't label as horror, but it's all horror for some reason. There's a film called The Trees Have Eyes, which I hate the title. However, this is a film that's close to your heart in some way.
Yes, that is true. So if you walk into Walmart, hopefully wearing a mask, you can pick up The Trees Have Eyes. It was shot under the title Dead Bounty, which is a much better title, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the distributor, for whatever reason, disagreed and wanted to call it The Trees Have Eyes, which makes it sound like a cannibal movie in the woods. It is not. It is very much like a love letter to Romero's zombie movies. And I served as the still photographer, the publicist, and I play a zombie in it, which is fun. I get to eat some of Justin Beam's innards. He was a writer at Fangoria. Now he does a lot of special features for Scream Factory and stuff like that, and has a good podcast. That was a lot of fun. It's directed by my good friend Jordan Pacheco. I produced his next movie called A Bee Zoo Taker of Children. I'm sure it'll get reach out by the distributor also, but
so that'll end up with a title like the left house on the right or something, right?
He's a talented local filmmaker here, a talented special effects artist. He did effects for a few of my shorts, and then we started collaborating. I've worked on a bunch of his stuff. He's worked on a bunch of mine. But yeah, The Trees Have Eyes is a lot of fun. You can also get it on Amazon if you don't want to leave your house. But it is really cool to see a new independent horror film in Walmart that I worked on, no less. Also, I should mention, like, if I'm trying to sell it, it stars Tony Moran, who was unmasked Michael Myers at the end of Halloween. And it also has Timothy Patrick Quill, who was the blacksmith from Army of Darkness. They're both super fun to work with.
That's so awesome. And it's great to see that a movie, even with a title disaster like it has, to get the distribution and to get out there and get the opportunity. And I'm sure at some point Shudder will pick it up and get it out there to people because it's exactly that side of the title.
I would love that. I will say quick side story about terrible retitles. So Dead Bounty, aka Trees Have Eyes, was Jordan's second movie. His first movie, he shot under the title Provoked, and it came out. It's like a possession haunting story, and it came out right around the time as the Poltergeist remake, and the distributor retitled it American Poltergeist, which he hates. And then a different movie came out called American Poltergeist like 6 months later, and that one came out on Netflix, and I haven't watched it, but apparently it's really bad. So like he gets negative reviews about his movie, people thinking they saw the one because it was on Netflix, so it was like
right.
So I don't know, that was a disaster. So it's slightly better than that, at least. That's the way we look at the Trees Have Eyes.
It's just I just don't understand why these people get these marketing ideas. I mean,
I guess
it's not that tough.
American Poltergeist, they also gave it new artwork that looked just like, it was a girl at a staticky TV pretty much. But from what I've heard, because that was when like Redbox was huge. I mean, Redbox is still big, but at the time it was like huge for DVDs when that came out. And if you start with an A, you show up at the beginning of the queue if you're not looking at new releases, if you're looking at alphabetical. So there's like a ton, in the last like 10 years, you'll see a crazy influx of independent movies that needlessly start with a word that starts with the letter A. So I don't know. That it certainly didn't help Jordan's movie because a different movie had the same title. But anyway,
that's so incredible. It's not funny to me. But it got the distribution deal, so you almost can't complain about the title at a certain point because the other side is to languish in obscurity and unavailability, I guess, right?
One more button on that story. So Jordan got them. It was his first movie. He's a big tattooed up tough guy. I love Jordan. He's a teddy bear, but looks like a big tattooed tough guy. So he got the title Provoked tattooed across his neck before it was retitled, and the distributor called him and was like, "So how attached to the title Provoked are you?" He's like, "It's literally attached to me. Like I have it tattooed across my neck." It's like, "Oh well, got some bad news for you."
That is pretty amazing.
It's like a funny story now. He was not happy about it for a long time, but now we can laugh about it.
Well, you know what? At least the word provoked, you could make up a lie, and it kind of still works, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it had been
Provoked is like a good title for a ghost movie, I think. Like it's like intriguing.
No, I like it.
They could have called it American Provoked, I guess. I don't know.
American Provoked, a Canadian ghost story. So before we wrap up, if there's anyone out there who has any last questions to come up for Alex, and I already added all your contact information, the website and your Twitter feed to the description under the video. But before we get to wrapping things up and any final questions from the chat, I just want to say that like what I'm trying to do here and what other people in my community are trying to do is to build a community that's based on the voices of the people actually on the ground. That where the sneakers hits the concrete rather than 500 feet in the air with websites that are established and have to answer to relationships with distributors and filmmakers. Because I think that somewhere along the lines, the old monster mags that built the first horror community when we were all just monster kids, somehow it got corrupted at a certain point. And it wasn't nefarious. It wasn't pernicious, right? It was just something that happened as the business side took over. So when I see your site come up and it's so grounded and it's such a positive for us, I can't help but think that if we had 50 sites, not doing what you do, but inspired by that sort of, again, feet on the ground, helping my fellow fan, we'd be in a lot better shape.
Oh,
so, genuinely, I think that we have gotten kind of on the wrong track in a lot of cases. I can remember when Fangoria was in its kind of first death throes in the early 90s, and it looked bad for the magazine, and they doubled down on like their opinions, right? If you like this, then there's something wrong with you. And it was like, someone's favorite movie. We talked about this earlier. You know, I'm glad Friday 5 exists, not because I enjoy it, because I may never watch it again. But someone out there loves it. So that's a great thing. But it seems like there's a certain intolerance as the business, as businesses get deeper entrenched in the genre, and in the convention scene. And it's not just big websites; it's all over the place. So I think what you're doing is very important. I think what we do here, in its own way, is important. But providing voices to for the fans and having it very public is very important. So before we go, I have a question, and then we'll get to the final questions. Where do you want to see? I asked you at the beginning where you thought the horror genre was at. Where do you want to see the horror genre at in a few years?
Good question. First of all, thank you for all of the kind words you said. That genuinely means a lot, because it's so, I mean, there's interactions and stuff on social media which are meaningful, but it's just to have somebody, you know, sit you down and say something like that. I really appreciate that. So thank you. As for the question, I don't know. I'm relatively happy with where it seems to be heading. What I touched upon earlier, which is you know, more smaller, more marginalized, more independent voices kind of getting the spotlight. Because if you'd asked me that question maybe, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago about where the genre was at that time, it was very much, you know, it was like all, you know, we went through the torture porn cycle, the remake cycle, the found footage cycle. And now we're finally seem to be at a place where we're kind of getting a little bit of everything, which is how it should be. That's how it was, you know, pre, you know, all the franchises, you know, in the 70s and earlier. And obviously in the 80s, but then it kind of got dominated by slashers, and then again in the 90s. But I think it's an exciting time because there's no trend right now that everyone's hopping on. There's a lot that are, like I said, they're kind of, you know, popping up intermittently, but no, it's not like, oh, this is the next whatever, the next slasher boom, the next whatever. And that's exciting to me. It's exciting to me as a viewer, as somebody who lives and breathes this stuff, and as somebody who's trying to make movies. You know, I'm only doing shorts right now, but like obviously the goal is to ultimately make the jump to features, and I want the freedom to do something that's meaningful to me. That's not just something that's trying to capitalize on the success of something else and you know, cash in on a trend. As both a viewer and a creator, that's the ultimate goal.
I think that's what we all want in a lot of ways. And I'm hoping that companies like A24 and the Reborn Hammer films are leading us into a decade like the 70s of great experimentation. But I think our voices are going to be important, like collectively. I don't mean you and I, but yes, you and I too. But collectively, we have to really support when something comes out that's really different and great or brave, or even doesn't work, but really tried to do something creative. We need to be out there and supporting it with our pocketbooks. Because you know what, when you put a bill down on a product, the people who are collecting the bill take notice.
Absolutely.
So
the only thing you take notice of it, really, like social media buzz means very little. Like it helps the publicist, it makes the publicists look good, but like if they're not selling movie tickets or whatever, VOD rentals, you're not going to get more stuff like that.
And I can tell you, you know, when my book Blue Eel was released, the publisher hired a publicity company and spent thousands of dollars, and they basically did nothing, nothing of value anyway. But I can tell you, like, just my audience here respond much more meaningfully to my work, and I don't stand there and scream that they should buy my work every video. But the truth is, I think when we remove the human element, we get in trouble. And I think that by having independent voices from all different walks of life, and we embrace all of those ideas. So it's weird. It's not, to me, it's not about gender or race at all. Although people can come from wherever in that. I want to hear about the guy who grew up on a farm. I want to see the horror movie from the guy who grew up on a farm in Colorado. And I want to see the Czech the woman who is an expatriate from the Czech Republic who came to America not speaking the language. I want to see her film because I think they are going to bring all these traditions and ideas that they can't help but be original and be positive for the genre. So to me, it's not about any group. It's just about we want that big democracy of ideas out there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, again, it's an exciting time because people are getting the chance to tell these stories that maybe they wouldn't have 5 years ago, and people are listening, and we have to help spread it like wildfire as best we can.
Absolutely. So our last question of the night is, well, actually, we got two now. Les Cunningham asks, do you read any horror mags like Creeps, Scary Monsters, or Fango?
It's a weird subject now, but I loved the Fangoria Volume 2 or whatever they were calling it. I dabbled in Fangoria. I didn't get into it till I was a little older, but I pick up the occasional Fangoria Horror Hound or Rue Morgue, basically depending on what was on the cover. And I was super into that, but at that point it was like most of the stuff they were covering, like I already knew about because it was online, a month.
They can't break news when they have a 2-month lead.
Exactly. And even like the interviews they were doing, the retrospective stuff was always cool because that was you couldn't get that everywhere. But like if they were doing an interview about the movie that was coming out that month or whatever that the issue dropped, like there'd be 50 websites interviewing those same filmmakers or actors or whomever. And I think that's where they started to go downhill. So what I thought was so brilliant about the new Fangoria is that it became this, it wasn't this throwaway, magazine in the traditional sense. It was almost like a book. It was like curated articles, not just news and content, so to speak. Yeah, they promoted some of the newer movies, but they were usually a little more in depth in their interviews, or they do cool things like getting Jordan Peele to interview Ari Aster or whatever they did. Just like really interesting stuff like that, and really talented writers doing like more long form, in depth articles. So I'd love to see a return to that, be it in magazine or online. I hope somebody who's not a scumbag buys Fangoria and continues it with the same team there, because I think they were awesome and just kind of got, they were unfortunate victim of circumstance.
A lot of people caught in the middle of that nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
Exactly.
But I have very mixed feelings about the new Fangoria. Just for clarity, I grew up with Fango. In its first run, I had 2 letters to the publisher published. I own the entire first 100 issues. So I was the core audience, for the rebirth. And then I saw that they wanted $60 for 4 issues.
That was tough.
Well, here's my problem with it. I can afford it. It's not that. What killed me was the idea that the 12-year-old kid that I was at the grocery store looking through the magazine rack is never going to get that opportunity with a magazine priced that way.
You're right. But I also think if a 12-year-old were to pick up a new issue of Fangoria beyond the cover, it probably wouldn't interest them too much because it is a lot of words, which as an adult I appreciate, but it's not the gore photos that of the Fangoria of yesteryear.
Yeah, but that's kind of my point, is that I think that it would have been, as much as we like seeing the word Fangoria on a cover, it probably should have been its own thing.
That's a fair point. It could have been, but I also think I'm not sure how to word it. I'm not sure they could have commanded a $20 an issue price point or whatever without the Fangoria brand.
You're right.
And maybe that would.
You're 100% right.
Maybe that would.
There's no question that I'm responding like emotionally to this, not intellectually. There's no question about it. But for me, I don't know what the kid today who was me, who is the kid of today that I see in myself. Again, where is that kid turning right now?
Well,
is it just online? I mean,
that's what. Yeah, I think that's an important distinction, because Fangoria was your only outlet as a kid. You couldn't find that stuff anywhere else. Now they can hop on not only dedicated websites, but they can just look at Twitter, look at Facebook, look at any social media, and you can get instant. I feel like reviews almost don't even matter anymore because people don't trust. It's not like you have a Siskel and Ebert or whatever. People, even when I review stuff, like I get like that, those articles don't do well. Like people don't read them a lot. Sometimes maybe about special features and stuff, but they don't care what I think about a movie because they already know what their friends said,
Right.
Or you can just search a hashtag and quickly tell, in a scroll, is this movie worth my time? So I think that's where the kids are turning, and I think that's why it's helpful to have these communities. It's also important to be open and accepting, and I'm glad to see when people are called out for gatekeeping and stuff like that. Like the community's never going to grow. It's not going to last if you're trying to keep people out just because this kid's only seen whatever the new Child's Play and never the original Child's Play or whatever. Like everyone has to start somewhere. I'm sure when I was like 15 trying to tell people I was a horror fan because I love Freddy vs. Jason, people were like, thought I was an idiot too, but like everyone has to start somewhere. So I think it's cool that now a kid like the new It movies probably made like the way people our age probably talk about like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Elm Street. They're going to be talking about Pennywise from the new It movies and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's exciting and it's evolving. And I think the internet is the cause for a lot of that.
I agree with everything you just said. I think that on some level, I'm still trying to get my 47-year-old next week ass around the concept of, because just like records for me growing up, it wasn't just, you didn't just listen to the record, you stared at the artwork, you read the liner notes, you obsessed. And I'm not sure if people really have the physical artifacts to obsess over.
Now
and that was important.
It's it's singles.
Yeah, well, but it is there is a market, but again, at $40 a record, it's not for kids, which I decry. We have to find a way, I think, if we want a generation to grow up with the kind of passion that there was a generation that did have. I don't want them to have my experience because that's just not realistic, but I don't want them to lose any of the experience. Does that make sense?
I get it. Yeah. I think
it's a balance.
I think it has to happen organically though, because it's like, if I don't know, if your dad was pushing you to play football or whatever, then you rebel and do whatever, I feel like if you're trying to, I don't know how to word it. It's evolving naturally. And I think if we embrace that, we'll have more success than trying to push what we already know. I don't know. It's a weird nebulous thing. But in a perfect world, it'll exist in all forms, both the familiar and whatever's new and up and coming.
So the last question comes from T-Bob. He asks, what is your favorite film to watch on VHS?
Oh, man. Quick plug for my own releases of the Broke Horror fan line. I mean, it was super exciting to do Victor Crowley. That was our first release. And like I said, I love that franchise. Color Out of Space was amazing. Like I cropped Nicolas Cage into 4x3 for an official VHS release. That's insane to me. But an underrated title that we released, it's called Director's Cut, which is.
I knew you were doing it. I could have bet money.
It's
movie.
Terribly search engine unfriendly because it's called Director's Cut and it's a movie. Yeah. But it's directed by Adam Rifkin, who did Detroit Rock City, starring Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller fame, and written by him as well. And it's like a really fun meta, sometimes comedy, sometimes horror, sometimes action, sometimes just what the fuck am I watching? But the concept is, real quick pitch, this is not my movie. I don't make any money if you buy it. It's on Amazon, streaming, I think, on Prime for free.
You sold out of it, didn't you?
We might have a couple copies left of the VHS if someone's interested. There's only 50. It didn't sell super well, but I'm happy. I was super happy to do it. We also got a really funny intro by Penn, like filming at his crazy mansion. And he's just like, I can't believe this movie's coming on a VHS. What an idiot. So that's amazing. But anyway, the movie itself, it's like Penn plays this crazy like crowdfunding guy who steals the footage for this movie he's crowdfunding and kidnaps the lead actress to like make the movie he wants. And he's also recording his own audio commentary over his director's cut. It's so underrated. I really wish more people would check it out. So watch that on Prime, on VHS, however you want to watch it, or pick up the Blu-ray from Epic Pictures. It's a really good movie. In terms of old movies, I think the Godzilla movies are probably my favorite on VHS. Now they're only the American dubs, but there's something, I don't know. It helps hide some of the cheesiness of the man in suit effects. But I don't know, just something about it seems like the way Godzilla was meant to be made, which is sacrilegious to the filmmakers, I'm sure. Like I'd feel terrible if someone was like, I should watch your movie in terrible,
240p.
yeah, exactly. And cropped so you're only seeing half the image. But I don't know, it's just something about that feels like comfort food in movie form. So I have a stack of I don't know, there's 32, something like that, Japanese Godzilla movies. I have maybe 10 of them on VHS, but they're really fun to just throw on for a good time.
I about 2 weeks ago watched Godzilla versus Megalon on VHS. So
there we go.
But I'm going to cheat because I'm not going to answer the question properly because I always kind of reinvent the questions. I just picked up a Laserdisc copy of Slipping into Darkness, the great early 90s River's Edge ripoff that made its rounds on cable. And I like it more than River's Edge. I mean, it doesn't have Crispin Glover, so, you lose out on the Glover. But what you gain is a movie that's kind of just so unhinged that it ever got made. And if you haven't seen it, it's about three girls who are friends. And it's about a pair of brothers. And the one brother is developmentally arrested. And through a night of carelessness and alcohol and drugs, the disabled brother ends up getting hit by a train. And the rest of the film is about the friends of the brother who are a biker gang trying to take revenge on the girls, but it goes really bad because they all kind of fall for the girls at the same time. So it becomes this big, messy movie with a lot of violence by the end. It's really cool, and no one knows it. And I will never own it on anything but Laserdisc because guess what? It exists on VHS and Laserdisc, and the VHS copies go for about $100 a pop. So my Laserdisc is where it's at. I bought it for $8, and I'm happy.
Hopefully someone picks it up. That seems like something like Vinegar Syndrome would discover somewhere, or something. Unless it's some kind of weird rights issue. But
well, maybe Broke Horror Fan could put out a VHS edition.
Hey,
you'd have at least one sale,
and probably.
All right. Probably, unfortunately.
No, I want to.
All right. So, guys, thank you all for watching tonight. I really appreciate it. We're getting some really nice comments thanking us in the comments, and I really do appreciate that. I appreciate all you being out there and speaking your minds. The show will be back on Monday, where we will be having a group discussion about Romero's Dead films with my regular cohorts, Jamie and Jay the Stingray. So that should be a three-way discussion of a trilogy that went on beyond the trilogy. And we'll just put it that way. So I hope you all can join us. And in the meantime, everyone, please have a tremendous and safe evening. Be good.
Thank you.